Modern Crime Scope explores the darkest corners of human behavior, uncovering real and fictional true crime stories with gripping detail. From shocking murders to chilling mysteries, we bring you suspenseful, well-researched documentaries that keep you on the edge of your seat. Marissa Green always seemed like the perfect wife. But when police discovered Daniel Green's body, the shocking truth about her dark secret was finally revealed. Marissa Green lived in a neighborhood where the lawns were perfectly trimmed, and the houses gleamed in the sunlight as if lifted from a magazine. To outsiders, she seemed to have it all: a luxurious home, a husband who was admired by friends and colleagues, and a life of comfort most could only dream of. Her husband, Daniel Green, was a charismatic entrepreneur, known for his generosity and business acumen. People often described him as the kind of man who could light up a room with his presence. Together, they presented an image of the perfect couple, gracious, successful, and enviably happy. But behind the polished smiles and Instagram-perfect snapshots, the truth was far darker. Marissa had grown increasingly resentful over the years. Daniel's charm, once endearing, had begun to irritate her. He was controlling in subtle ways, monitoring finances and questioning her social interactions, always under the guise of concern. Marissa, in turn, had developed a life of her own secrets. Late-night drives with no explanation, deleted messages on her phone, and whispered phone calls became her way of reclaiming control. At first, it was small things: meeting friends in secret, shopping sprees Daniel didn't approve of, but over time, her defiance grew bolder. She kept a hidden journal filled with plans, grievances, and increasingly dark fantasies about life without Daniel. The tipping point came one stormy evening. Tensions between them had been simmering for months, each argument leaving invisible scars that neither wanted to acknowledge. That night, Daniel had returned home later than usual, soaked from the rain, and angry about an overdue business meeting. Marissa pretended to be calm, hiding the true storm raging inside her. Their conversation escalated quickly, words sharp and cutting, until it ended with Daniel storming out, leaving a chilling silence in the house. Marissa watched him leave, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. She knew things could never go back to the way they were. By the next morning, Daniel was gone. His car remained parked outside the house, untouched, as if he had disappeared into thin air. Marissa reported him missing, her tears and panic convincing neighbors and friends that she was a wife desperate to find her husband. Social media became her stage. She posted messages pleading for anyone with information to come forward. Friends organized searches, local news picked up the story, and the community rallied behind her. But behind closed doors, Marissa's carefully constructed facade was hiding a chilling reality. She moved with quiet efficiency, erasing digital traces, cleaning spaces he had touched, and preparing for a future she now envisioned without him. The police initially had few leads. Daniel's colleagues claimed he had no known enemies, and his personal life seemed stable. Yet investigators noticed subtle inconsistencies in Marissa's account, small gaps in her timeline and details that didn't quite align with facts. Still, she maintained her composed, grieving wife persona, attending every search effort and answering questions with plausible explanations. Everyone outside her home saw a woman stricken by loss. But inside, Marissa's mind raced with calculated plans. The perfect life she projected was a mask concealing a much darker intention, and as the days passed, her true nature remained hidden beneath layers of deception and charm, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The disappearance of Daniel Green shook the quiet town, and the local police immediately launched a thorough investigation. Detectives interviewed friends, colleagues, and neighbors, trying to piece together his last known movements. They combed through his office, examined phone records, and checked surveillance footage from nearby streets. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Daniel had no known enemies, no recent threats, and no signs that he had planned to vanish. The case began to feel like a puzzle missing critical pieces, and Marissa's careful performance only complicated matters. She appeared at the station often, offering updates, expressing worry, and even suggesting ways the police could expand their search. Her presence reassured them. If she was truly involved, she was hiding it well. While investigators followed leads, Marissa quietly ensured that no evidence could tie her to Daniel's disappearance. She wiped her phone clean of messages, deleted browsing histories, and carefully disposed of any documents that hinted at her growing resentment toward her husband. Even within the house, she methodically cleaned spaces he had used, removing fingerprints, wiping surfaces, and eliminating anything that could suggest a struggle. Outside, she continued to maintain the image of the grieving wife, posting updates on social media, sharing photos of herself looking distraught, and attending community searches. To outsiders, her life was consumed by the hunt for Daniel, but every act she performed was part of a carefully orchestrated plan. The police began to notice minor inconsistencies in her accounts. She would claim to have last seen Daniel at certain times or in particular places, but these statements sometimes conflicted with phone records or witness observations. Investigators started to catalog these discrepancies, but without hard evidence, they could only note them and move on. Meanwhile, Marissa's control over her environment grew. She changed passwords, altered schedules, and even asked friends to cover for her when she needed to leave town briefly. She learned to anticipate questions before they were asked and prepared plausible answers for every scenario. Every careful maneuver made her look more innocent, but inside, she was always calculating her next step. As weeks turned into months, the investigation slowed. Leads dried up, tips went nowhere, and the case began to fade from headlines. Yet Marissa never relaxed. The pressure of keeping a secret so dark weighed heavily, but she masked it with charm and a practiced calm. She purchased the cabin in the woods, a secluded property where she could hide the truth of Daniel's fate. Every visit was calculated, ensuring no one saw her there and that any trace of her presence could be explained away. She left no footprints that could connect her to the property, and she documented nothing that could be traced back to her. Though the police temporarily slowed their search, they did not stop. Detectives revisited the evidence repeatedly, studying patterns and reviewing overlooked details. Every tip, no matter how small, was examined. Unknown to Marissa, the smallest mistakes she had made, the one night she forgot to dispose of a receipt, the brief glimpse of her at the cabin caught by a passerby's camera, would soon form a chain of evidence. The quiet town, which had once seen her as a model wife, was about to witness a shocking revelation. The meticulous control she had maintained was beginning to slip, and the secret she believed was buried would soon surface in the most dramatic way imaginable. The investigation into Daniel Green's disappearance had gone cold, but the detectives never stopped searching. Months had passed, and the public's attention had shifted, yet the police quietly followed up on every tip that came their way. One crisp autumn morning, a hiker called the station to report something unusual near the edge of the woods outside town. He had been walking along a little-used trail when he noticed the disturbed earth and what looked like the corner of a tarp partially buried under fallen leaves. The tip seemed minor at first, but the details, location, time, and description, caught the attention of a detective who had kept Daniel's case active. They decided to investigate immediately. A team of officers arrived at the site, carefully moving through the dense forest. The ground was soft from recent rains, and the smell of damp earth hung in the air. At first, nothing appeared out of the ordinary, but a closer inspection revealed signs of recent digging. Leaves had been disturbed in a pattern that suggested someone had tried to cover something up. As the officers dug deeper, their shovels hit an object that was unmistakably human. Slowly, they uncovered the remains of Daniel Green, his body hidden in a shallow grave beneath the forest floor. It was a grim discovery, one that instantly reignited the investigation and sent shockwaves through the local community. Forensics arrived quickly, photographing the scene and carefully retrieving the body for examination. The condition of the grave suggested meticulous planning. The dirt had been carefully replaced, and the tarp had been used to conceal the remains. Investigators noted the precision of the burial, which hinted at a perpetrator who knew exactly what they were doing. Every detail, from the placement of the body to the absence of footprints leading away from the grave, spoke to careful forethought and planning. The team immediately began reconstructing Daniel's last movements, combing through every piece of evidence for clues that could lead them to the person responsible. As the forensic report began to take shape, the detectives started connecting dots that had seemed insignificant months earlier. Daniel's disappearance had not been random. It had been orchestrated by someone close to him. Digital records revealed deleted messages and unexplained trips that coincided with his disappearance. Neighbors recalled seeing Marissa at unusual hours near the woods, something they had dismissed at the time. The pieces of the puzzle slowly formed a picture that was impossible to ignore. Every subtle detail pointed to Marissa as the person with the knowledge, means, and opportunity to commit the crime. When the authorities finally approached Marissa, the calm facade she had maintained for months began to falter. The discovery of the body shattered the illusion of innocence she had projected so convincingly. Her carefully constructed story of grief, of a missing husband, began to unravel as investigators presented the evidence. Every step she had taken to hide her actions, the cleanup, the deleted messages, the careful scheduling, was now being meticulously examined and documented. The revelation that Daniel had been buried nearby, concealed yet so close to the eyes of the world, brought a chilling realization. The secret she had believed was perfectly hidden was now fully exposed. The small town that once admired Marissa Green was about to witness the horrifying truth of the lengths one woman could go to hide a murder. The morning the police discovered Daniel's body, Marissa Green's carefully constructed world began to crumble. She had received an early call from an unfamiliar number, one that she instinctively knew would change everything. The voice on the other end was calm but firm, informing her that authorities had located Daniel's remains in the woods. For a brief, disorienting moment, she froze, her mind racing to calculate the implications. Every precaution she had taken, every lie she had woven, suddenly felt fragile, as if a single gust of wind could blow it all away. The life she had meticulously curated, a life of appearances, charm, and manipulation, was on the verge of collapse. Marissa attempted to maintain her composure, aware that any outward display of panic could arouse suspicion. She dressed carefully, adjusted her expression to one of controlled grief, and prepared to meet the police at their request. Every step she took was deliberate, yet beneath the surface, her thoughts spiraled. She replayed the months since Daniel's disappearance, every calculated action, every erased message, every visit to the cabin in the woods, and realized that even her smallest misstep could now be used against her. The sense of invincibility she had carried for so long vanished, replaced by a suffocating awareness that the truth was no longer hers to control. When detectives arrived at her home, they came with warrants and a team of forensic specialists. The search was methodical and exhaustive, leaving no corner unexamined. They documented receipts for tools and materials that matched items used in the burial, traced her movements to the secluded cabin, and retrieved digital evidence that confirmed she had manipulated timelines and alibis. Marissa stood silently as her carefully curated facade began to crack under the weight of undeniable evidence. Each item discovered, each digital trail reconstructed, was a reminder that her secret, once buried and secure, had been unearthed with precision. As investigators presented their findings, Marissa's mind raced through possible defenses, strategies, and escape routes. But with every passing moment, it became painfully clear that her options were shrinking. The web of lies she had spun, so intricate and convincing to outsiders, was unraveling thread by thread. The police pieced together her actions with a meticulous attention to detail, demonstrating not only opportunity but intent. The evidence was overwhelming, and the realization struck her fully. The careful image of the grieving wife she had maintained for months could no longer protect her from the consequences of her actions. The gravity of the situation hit harder as she considered the implications for her life moving forward. The neighbors who had admired her, the friends who had supported her, the public who had followed her social media posts, all would soon learn the chilling truth. The life she had controlled, shaped, and manipulated for years was ending in an instant. Marissa felt a mixture of fear, regret, and a dawning sense of inevitability. The police had not only discovered the body, but had exposed the meticulous planning and deception that had concealed it. The realization was suffocating. The secret she had believed to be buried forever was now fully exposed, and there was no way to undo the consequences that were about to follow. The trial of Marissa Green became a spectacle that captured the attention of the nation. Headlines splashed across newspapers and online outlets depicted the shocking story of a seemingly perfect wife who had secretly murdered her husband. Courtrooms were packed as the prosecution meticulously presented the evidence. The digital footprints tracing her movements, the receipts and items purchased to facilitate the burial, and forensic reports detailing Daniel's death. Each piece of evidence was carefully laid out to demonstrate not only opportunity, but intent. The prosecution painted a chilling picture of a woman who had manipulated those around her, concealed her actions, and orchestrated the crime with frightening precision. Witnesses recounted subtle warning signs in Daniel and Marissa's marriage. Friends described tense conversations they had witnessed, unexplained injuries Daniel had once tried to hide, and strange behavior from Marissa in the months leading up to his disappearance. Neighbors testified about seeing her at odd hours, near the cabin in the woods, and about unusual trips she had taken without explanation. Even casual acquaintances were called to describe her charm, her ability to present herself as innocent and concerned, and how convincingly she had maintained the facade of a grieving wife. Each testimony chipped away at the image she had carefully constructed for months. Marissa's defense tried to paint her as a woman under stress, claiming emotional instability and suggesting that Daniel had disappeared voluntarily. They argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that the timing of the discoveries could be interpreted in different ways. But the prosecution countered with precision, showing how each action was deliberate and planned. Surveillance footage, phone records, and forensic findings created an undeniable timeline of her movements. The jury saw a pattern of calculated behavior, a step-by-step orchestration of a crime designed to appear accidental or unsolvable. As the evidence mounted, it became increasingly clear that Marissa's image of innocence was a carefully constructed illusion. Throughout the proceedings, Marissa maintained a calm, almost serene demeanor, but those close enough to observe could see subtle cracks, a flicker of anxiety in her eyes, a tense jaw, a momentary hesitation before responding. Every piece of evidence brought her closer to the edge, and every testimony reminded her that there was no way to reverse what had been done. The careful control she had once wielded over her environment was gone. Her fate was now in the hands of the jury, and the overwhelming weight of proof made a conviction seem inevitable. When the jury returned, the room was tense with anticipation. After only a short deliberation, the verdict was delivered, guilty of first-degree murder and obstruction of justice. The sentence was life without parole. The courtroom was silent except for the rustle of papers and the solemn pronouncement of justice. The story of Marissa Green became a chilling reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that calculated evil can hide behind the most charming and sophisticated facades. As she was led away, the life she had manipulated, the perfect image she had projected, and the freedom she had once taken for granted were gone forever, replaced by the stark reality of consequences she could no longer escape.